There are many great anti-war movies, and war movies in general. Saving Private Ryan, Apocalypse Now, Tora Tora, and even to some extent, Doctor Strangelove, and many, many more. However, in my opinion, there is one that is so powerful it should be considered to be the greatest war movie of all time. And that movie is Come and See. The movie is made by Elm Klimov, who made possibly the most anti-war movie ever made, due to being in Stalingrad at the time of World War II.
Очень почему-то вот меня соднило, что я не сделал свой фильм о войне. Дело в том, что я родом из Сталинграда, и мальчиком, естественно, я был и видел и вот эти бомбежки.
And the title of the movie was originally supposed to be called Kill Hitler, but was later changed to Come and See.
Во-первых, хочу сказать, откуда происходит это название. Дело в том, что когда впервые возник сценарий, который мы делали вместе с Олесем Адамаевичем, о котором сейчас обязательно скажу несколько добрых слов, первый вариант сценария, который тогда мы написали, он назывался «Убейте Гитлера». Ну вот, а потом уже через паузу в 7 лет, когда снова вернулись к этой теме, дозволено было вернуться, вот, то нам сказали сразу, слово «Гитлер» не должно присутствовать. Я говорю, ну убейте Гитлера, в более широком смысле, чем просто там Гитлера. Вот. И тогда, значит, я попросил моего брата, надо было срочно менять название, заглянуть в Евангелие. Вот. Пока мы ехали в Госкино, он уже там полистал Апокалипсис, Откровение святого Иоанна. И там нашел этот рефрен. Срывается первая печать, открывается книга первая, иди и смотри.
And that makes sense, as this film is one of the most brutal and chaotic films I've ever seen. The film stars Alexei Kravchenko, a young teenage boy whose acting was so good he made a full room cry and thus was cast in the lead role.
У него синие глаза. Давайте его попробуем. Мне дали номерок, по-моему, 13-й номер. Меня сфотографировали, и надо было сыграть такой этюдик. Тогда для меня это было настолько непривычно и странно, что, наверное, с испугу я это сделал. Мне сказали, вот представь, вот кровать, на кровати лежит мама. Мама умирает. Вот твоя реакция какая. У меня сразу начинают слезы. Вдруг, неожиданно для себя. Я даже это же невозможно отрепетировать. Это только какой-то посыл внутренней энергетики, желания. Я начинаю, мама, мамочка, мамочка. Кто-то сказал стоп. Я посмотрел, понимаю, что как минимум половина людей, которые на меня смотрели, в слезах.
The film follows Floria, who joins the Soviet army against his family's wishes. After being subjected to unfair treatment in the army, he returns home to find his family massacred by the German forces, and the story continues from there. So in order to prepare for the movie, Alexei was forced to watch hours upon hours of World War II footage, specifically the atrocities that occurred which messed him up mentally.
Он мне сказал, что я должен посмотреть хронику военную, концлагеря, ужасы войны. Я смотрел, честно смотрел, не знаю, часа 2, по-моему. После чего я пришел к нему в кабинет, и этот замечательный человек сказал, давай чайку попьем, торт будешь? Я сказал, нет, торт я не буду. После просмотренного это невозможно было.
And another reason the film was made was he felt that the world was going to forget the atrocities that occurred, and thus he made the film, a brutal but necessary piece of art, a landscape of almost a dystopian world, which he described as a trip to hell. and it sure was, as they used real bullets, which you can clearly see in the movie. And it got so bad, particularly the barn scene, that the director thought they had to hypnotize the main actor in order to keep him sane and not in an asylum.
Вот, и слава богу, этот Леша Кравченко, этот мальчик не сошел с ума, и маме вернули его. Вот, когда первый раз начинали, я работал с гипнологами, это еще на агонии. И Вольф Мессинг был тогда рядом и сниматься должен был в агонии. К сожалению, пленки не хватило на него, а так сейчас бы мы имели на экране Вольфа Мессинга великого. Вот, и, ну, короче, я понимал, что я должен буду защитить этого вот несчастного ребенка от того, чтобы он не рехнулся.
Also killing a cow. In the movie, however, it was sick, so it wasn't as bad as it sounds. And apparently every accent in the film was accurate, especially the Germans who speak Russian. And also, there's the camera and the sound. One of the best bits about the film is the look and sound of it. The sound of the bombing, fire and screaming, all done to perfection. They also make the sound weird for the rest of the movie in order to give the feeling that the main character is partly deaf, due to a scene where he does actually go partly deaf due to bombing. The way the camera is used is genius, such as the use of the split diopter in multiple shots across the movie. And they use multiple times a close-up shot of someone looking directly in the camera, which gives the feeling that they're directly addressing you, as if you're there and they're there. And their POV shot, which is done very well, considering the length of it, and they use different colours throughout the movie, as it's also very noticeable, as the movie's opening scene, while not like a rainbow, does look quite colourful. However, as the movie goes on, it gets darker and darker, more drab and dirty, and the only colour we do see usually is the blue coloured eyes, which we see multiple times throughout the movie. The film is considered by many to be the scariest film or the most terrifying film of all time. And for a good portion of the movie, it doesn't seem warranted, as nothing too extreme does happen, while there is a very unnerving scene where the main character, Floria, talks with the man from the opening scene. And in that scene, he warned them to not dig, as they dig through the sand in order to join the Soviet resistance due to having a gun. However, the last 50 to 40 minutes or so are what really make the film so memorable and disturbing, as Floria has now been captured by the Germans, and we see truly how evil the Nazis really are, which I think this movie has done better than anybody else. They round up the villagers and force them into a barn, fire flares at their friends and celebrate when they find a Jewish person. And then one of the soldiers says this: Floria leaves the barn, and it's shown that a woman chucked her child out the window. However, that said child is chucked back in, and the mother is dragged away. And they eventually begin to burn down the barn, joking and laughing as they do so. They begin to leave, meanwhile Floria is dragged by a soldier to an officer, where they take a picture, and probably the most famous shot of the film. And he collapses, just like the barn behind him, his whole life collapsing before him. And then a very great Steadicam shot where the mother is chucked into a big vehicle and gang raped in a very disturbing scene, and Floria is now walking through the woods where he spots a dead Nazi woman. He doesn't react at all, only grabbing the bandages. He looks up at the destruction and finds his old gun, when in a strong anti-war image he bandages up his gun. He then spots the mother from earlier.
петь, рожать.
This line is a reference to an earlier line in the movie, said by a different woman when Flora gets lost in the woods. He has now met up with his original group of Soviets, who have ambushed and killed most of the Germans. We see underneath a bridge the surviving Nazis. Some begin to plea, and Floria then says this to the rest of the group.
Я сказал, без детей выходи.
The man who said to leave the kids in the barn then says this. He killed the kids, saying they are where all the trouble starts, and that Belarus does not deserve to exist. And then again they begin to plea, which of course to no avail. Gasoline is poured over them and they have a stick on fire. However, they are shot to death, and left there just to rot. Floria looks at the camera in horror. Behind him seems to be a representation of his former self, thus he's looking back. He then takes his gun and begins to fire it at a portrait of Hitler. Each time he fires a shot, it shows footage of Hitler, and goes back in time further and further, his face getting angrier and angrier each time, and then it finally goes to a picture of baby Hitler, which Floria is unable to shoot, suggesting that he was unable to kill baby Hitler, and bring himself to be some sort of level of a Nazi, but he was able to kill Hitler and keep his innocence.
Название, вот про что я уже сказал, «Убейте Гитлера». Имелось в виду «Убейте Гитлера везде, убейте Гитлера в себе». Вот, потому что в каждом так или иначе живет дьявольское начало, хоть в меньшей степени, у кого-то в большей степени.
We then get a start of the destruction that happened in real life by the Germans, and the film ends on a long shot of Floria meeting up with his group and then walking through the woods. And this is the greatest war movie of all time, as it's brutal, beautiful, well acted, and by a kid playing the lead role very well as well. A great use of music and sound, and its realism has never been replicated.
Кончилась это уже давняя история. И поэтому потом, ну, то, что связано уже с показами, с просмотрами, масса всяких вот таких драматических, конечно, историй было, потому что вот в той же Америке люди с трудом смотрят этот фильм. Хотя есть и те, которые смотрят, а с трудом смотрят, потому что, ну, я уже говорил, они говорят, мы придумали фильмы ужасов, но это же совсем другое, это же жизнь. Ну, вот такие дела. Я не жалею, что я это сделал, этот фильм. Хотя вот так тяжело вот он рождался и так тяжело дался. Вот, но надо в жизни иногда совершать какие-то настоящие поступки и деяния. Наверное, тогда имеет смысл заниматься творчеством. Вот, если ты что-то людям можешь на самом деле серьезное, большое, серьезное принести.